On this episode of the Everett Lee Show, I have none other than wrestling journalist for over 15 years, Jim Phillips of ProWrestlingStories.com, right here on this episode of the Everett Lee Show.
The Everett Lee Show podcast, a shot of entertainment.
Jim Phillips, welcome to the Everett Lee Show. I've been wanting to get you on for a while to talk wrestling, man. I've been enjoying your stories off your website there, ProWrestlingStories.com. How long have you been doing that?
I've been with these guys for going on a couple of years now. The guy that owns Pro Wrestling Stories, JP, is a good brother of mine. We've become real close, sporting the gear, wearing the armor. Yeah, man, he's my brother, and I've been there for a while. He bought out Gorilla Position, where I was the senior editor, and whenever he bought that out, I came over and started working with those guys, and we're re-releasing my Wrestling Territories pieces. It's really good, man. I enjoy it there a lot. And I just want to say thank you for having me on, my brother. I've been looking forward to this for the last few days for sure, but I love coming and talking about wrestling anytime that I get the opportunity, man. It's my lifeblood.
I love it. I love it. And I love everything that you do with pro wrestling and the stories and everything that you write there on the website and stuff. And it's been a while since I last talked to you, because the last time I talked to you was when Podcasting Network did the tribute to the true master of wrestling ring music, Hurricane J.J. McGuire. And if you don't mind, let's raise a glass for our buddy there. What do you say?
I wish I had something better in it than water, my brother, but that's what we got today.
Yes.
Let me just say that Hurricane was one of my close friends, and we got really close toward the end of his life, and it's still something that just blows me away how quick it came and everything. But through my friendship with JJ, I went down and did his memorial and spoke at his memorial in Kentucky and stuff, and made a real nice road trip with my dad from Illinois to Kentucky, and that brought me and him together a little bit. So that was one of the gifts I got from JJ. And then another gift he gave me was the gift of the brotherhood and the friendship with guys like you and Dennis Spradlin down in Kentucky, and the American Giant and all these other guys, and brought me and John Cosper close together, who is, if you know John or you know anything about John, another amazing writer and historian of this business. Love his stuff. McGuire, yeah, he's something else, man. I miss him all the time. I see stuff all the time. I saw Jimmy Hart on a podcast the other day, and he was talking about doing theme songs and music, and Jimmy calls him Jimmy because his name was James John, and I didn't find it out till later on, and I wish I would have known, because I sure would have ribbed him calling him Jimmy John. Hey there, Jimmy John McGuire, how you doing? I would have loved to have ribbed him a little bit, but yeah, he knows. But
yes,
I'll give it back. Yeah, I'll give it back to you. We can talk about this series of matches. I'm excited.
Yes. One of the reasons why I hit you up is because, again, I enjoy everything that you do on ProWrestlingStories.com, talking about the territory days to different types of stuff that's gone on in those days, like Bill Watts, Ric Flair, Rowdy Roddy Piper, just to name a few right there. But one of the things that I mentioned this to you when I reached out to you was that I have a favorite trilogy. And a lot of people do know this, but some who don't. One of my favorite trilogies is Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat. That is one of my favorite trilogies in pro wrestling right there.
So, yeah, we're talking 1989, one of the biggest angles of that entire year. There's so many other little facets to those matches. Like, the matches are artwork. They're amazing. And we can talk about each one individually and break them down if you'd like. But there's so many other little facets happening that led to those matches and the reason for those matches. And we're going to talk about all that today. It's going to be a deep dive, as the young ones say. But listen, though, Billy and Susie, you need to go to bed because the fat man's going to use the angry words.
That's why my daughter's in bed right now, because she don't need to hear. My 5-year-old don't need to hear the way I talk.
Some of my friends have made the mistake of having me on speakerphone with their children in the car, and they're like, wait. And I was like, oh, you should have kayfabed me, because I didn't know you had kids around. I call it like it is. So this will be fun.
It is. This will definitely be fun here, because Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, 1989. Prior to what happened in 1989, I want to mention, Jim, WrestleMania 3. One of the matches, the top match that was built for WrestleMania 3 was Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan for the WWE Heavyweight Championship. But one match actually stuck out, which to me is one of my favorite matches on that card, which is Ricky Steamboat versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the Intercontinental Championship. That's one of my favorite matches on there. And the story behind that and the build up to that was pretty great, because to me, when I look at that match, Jim, it put Steamboat out there, in the mainstream because of the rock and wrestling connection at that time.
Well, it also broke a lot of barriers as far as in the in-ring work itself. Guys were still calling matches in the ring as they went. And for those that don't know the story behind that match, Steamboat and Savage was meticulous about his matches anyway, but Steamboat is very cerebral about his ring work as well. One of the reasons he's able to have these long, hour-long matches and keep the story going and not go dull. But they went through every point about that match and broke every move down in a series, and they would quiz each other. I heard stories from other guys that on the road, they would be like, what's move whatever, 121 or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's like drop down, pop up, you know what I'm saying? It's just craziness like that. But to have that chess mentality for the work in your mind, that's led to what they're doing a lot more today. The young kids today are, I hate to say scripting, because much like Cornette, shit like that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But yeah, that's what it is, though. And it's much more like that today than the call it in the ring style of the old school days. But if you don't mind, one of the little things that I said earlier, there's different little tangents. And around that WWF match, those guys stole that show, quite obviously, you know what I mean? And had such a good match that they were going to push, and did push, Ricky Steamboat as Intercontinental Champion. Well, as soon as he got that title, his wife was pregnant with her son. And right after he got that title, he asked for time off from the company to go be with their kid, you know what I mean, and his wife. And, Vince and the stories of those guys and the road schedule, and he just picked up the second most important title in the company, and now this guy wants time off. So he gets heat a little bit with the WWF office over it, right? So he gets his time off, but whenever he comes back, they were already staging people to come in and take that belt, which is one of the reasons he left the company that caused this match. That's what I say. There's a lot of little other factors, right? They were going to bring in Butch Reed to take the title from him, but Butch Reed had his own mess going on and liked to party a little too much and jacked that up for himself. So Steamboat ends up dropping the title to Honky Tonk Man right as he's on his way out the door, right? But this sets up a history, this little event, and we'll touch back on it later, sets up a history of Steamboat believing his hype too much. Steamboat is a great in-ring performer, one of the best. But I don't like the guy as far as, I can't say the guy as a person and human being, but as far as the way he is went through the business and the business moves he's made, I really don't care for any of the stuff that he's done very much. In Florida, he was with the Young Bloods, and from what I understand, he got into it with Dusty Rhodes down there over booking, and that's why he left Florida. That took him to Crockett's and stuff. So it seems like just about everywhere he goes, there's an issue. You know what I mean? But that's why he left the WWF to go to WCW, and then he comes in, and it was like on a weekly Saturday show where he came in and came into the ring and got in Flair's face. And then like the next Clash of Champions, they did the interview where he tears Flair's suit off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they stomp all over the ring and stuff like that. So this is also a tumultuous time in WCW because you're seeing the exit of Jim Herd and the entrance of the booking committee with Flair, Jim Cornette, and Kevin Sullivan. You know what I mean? So there's things happening there with the way people is being pushed. So I can't fault Ricky Steamboat for all his gimmick choices during that time. But I think he liked to believe his own hype a little too much. But they built to that very first match at Chi-Town Rumble. And yeah, that was amazing, man. That was like, you could tell whenever Steamboat first got to WCW and they were doing those little vignettes and those little short monologues and promos, whatever you want to call them, that there was magic there. And I know Flair and him saw it too. Oh man, we can make some money together. We can do something together, me and this guy, you know? So They went to the Chi-Town Rumble, and I'm taking over, man. I'm sorry. I'm jumping.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, like you said there, Steamboat exit. He dropped the Intercontinental title to Honky Tonk Man. He went to WCW, and then during that time there with Steamboat and the Intercontinental title, Flair was already making a name for himself with NWA, and him being the NWA World Champion. And around that time, that's pretty much where he introduced the world title as that gold world title, as the
big gold. Yeah,
I love that belt. I love the design of that. That's one of my favorite world title belts right there, I have to say. And him bringing that into the NWA there, and he pretty much was already making a name and doing his thing there. And then Steamboat, like you said, comes to WCW, and he pretty much wants Flair. Yeah, like you said, Flair wants to work with Steamboat, and he asked to work with Steamboat. I mean, I'd like to been a fly on the wall for that conversation right there.
I'm not sure whose idea it was to book the ladies' man versus the family man, but this is the angle that was being ran. And excuse me, little Colorado smoker's cough. So there's times that the timelines between the companies intersect as well. And another little facet that's interesting to note, as Herd had left, they had approached Bill Watts to come in and do booking for WCW, but he declined. He declined at first, Bill Watts of Mid-South, and he declined them, and that's how they got into the little booking committee. But at Chi-Town Rumble, the only really wrestling nerds and historians will have noticed this. If you watch the Chi-Town Rumble, the entry music into that pay-per-view is the music that they used every week on the Bill Watts television show for Mid-Watts or for Mid-South. I noticed it last night whenever I was watching. I was like, holy shit, that's the Mid-South music, right?
Right.
Yeah, so whenever they went to the Chi-Town Rumble, that's what the music they use, and that caught my attention. But at this same time, we're talking about the WWF is building, because we're in April, May, or the months of the year, 1989. Mm-hmm. We're talking WrestleMania time.
Yes.
So WWF is building to the Mega Powers, Savage, and Hogan, the Mega Powers Explode, WrestleMania 5. So this is really WCW and Jim Crockett's promotions answer to what the WWF is doing at that time. They got what they feel in these two guys as the biggest drawing potential to not only get them money, but pull people away. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, this went up against WrestleMania 5, the Mega Powers. I remember the Mega Powers splitting up. I remember watching Saturday night main event. I was asleep. My dad wakes me up and he's like, you got to come out here and look at this. And it was right when the Mega Powers split up. I remember seeing that as a kid, and I was devastated, man. Hogan and Macho. It's like, no.
So your dad was a fan?
Yeah, my dad was. Yeah. He was. He was
great that he came and woke up a young Everett Lee to come watch the Mega Powers bit on the Saturday night's main event.
Yes.
I was probably a teenager at that time watching that same thing. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool that your dad got you out of bed for that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was trying to stay awake, and I fell asleep. So he on the couch, he picks me up, puts me in bed, and he stays up to watch it because we came on late at that time.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden, my dad come busting in there, scares the shit out of me. He's like, you gotta see this happening. I run. Yeah, he's marking out. I'm marking out. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Fucking great.
Yeah, I run out there, and they just came right back from commercial, and they, the recap. That was the thing, you hear, Vince talking about, how his commentary style, which I do love. I have to throw that in there, it's like, this just happened, Vince, how
old school dance with the yellow blazer. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and then they did the recap of what happened during that match there, Mega Powers, what happened to Elizabeth. Hogan takes Elizabeth to the back. Macho's out there by himself, and he loses, and he comes back. He goes in the back there, and, the rest, what happened. And I'm just shocked, and I couldn't believe this. And this was pretty much setting up the main event for WrestleMania 5, which was, great, because it was a great story building for that. But yeah, the WCW knew they had to throw something up against WrestleMania, and this right here, like you said, the Family Man versus the the wild styling and profiling, Ric Flair in the $500 suits. Woo!
He tore that suit. Ric Flair, he had the suit was ripped down the back. Every time Flair would throw a punch, the suit would be whipping around. Flair worked all the way down to his jockey shorts.
Yes.
And that shit. It was hilarious, man.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, the Saturday night's main event was a huge deal because Saturday Night Live was in the shits at that time. So, and then WCW answered. It was like, we'll do this, we'll do that. WCW comes back with the Clash of Champions, which is basically a free pay-per-view once every 5 or 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was they were a lot of smart business decisions, but that second show that they did, that 2 out of 3 falls, went directly head to head against WrestleMania 5.
Yeah.
The same night.
I mean, that is something right there. They knew what they had to do because they had to go up against that was competition right there. So they tried everything to get people to watch what they were doing, and just this feud here, just the stories and stuff, the promos to me, Jim, the promos, Flair was on fire with the promos, because the promo you mentioned with him and Steamboat ripping the suit off and stuff and everything, and really at that time, let me ask you, have you seen anyone really manhandle Flair ripping his suits up at that time?
You had said it earlier, Flair had been cementing himself as the workhorse of that company and really carrying everything on his back and his gimmick. And like you said, nobody really touched him too much. And then the Four Horsemen was going for a long time too. And right before the Steamboat incident actually started the breakup of the Four Horsemen, because they had fired Luger. So it was down to Tully, and I think Tully, Arn, Dillon, and Flair, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or was it Wyndham, maybe? I can't remember. I think
Wyndham.
I'm going to get struck by lightning from the wrestling gods. Maybe those guys that already went to WWF, Tully and Arn. But that's what happened was Steamboat fired Dillon Flair fired Dillon because of what happened with Steamboat, because he said he couldn't count on him or some shit. And then next thing you know, that was the way Dillon left the company, so he could go to WWE and work up there as Vince's assistant.
Right.
But all that shit, it's so interlaced and intermingled one into the other. The way all that stuff happens, it's crazy.
It is.
Then he took Hiro Matsuda. Flair took Hiro Matsuda as his manager. So you see Hiro is Flair's manager through this whole series of matches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that first match, I'm sorry, go ahead. Like I have a tendency to, when I'm talking about history, man, I'll run with it.
That's what I love about you, man. That's what I love about you, because that's what I enjoy listening to you talk about, and hearing you on different other podcasts, and even when I'm reading everything that you're writing on ProWrestlingStories.com, it's almost like, almost like an audible book, because I can hear your voice as I'm reading, and it's like, Jim.
Oh, thank you. That's one of the things I strive for. But one of the things that JP told me when he brought me over, that always rang and sat with me, is he said that it's like a fireside chat. He said reading your stuff is like reading a fireside chat, somebody just telling a story around a campfire about the wrestling business and how things used to be, and you get into the territorial business and the love of it. It's not just like the back of a baseball card where any person can spit statistics, you know what I mean? But
right.
There's a difference between that and knowing, and there's not really a lot of people. We talked about Cosper earlier. Obviously, Cornette and the boys doing what he's doing. You got the Briscoe and Bradshaw doing what they're doing now. There's a few outlets where you can get the preservation of the history and the stories and the retelling of it. But yeah, anytime I get an opportunity to do that, man, it's like going to Sunday church, you know what I mean? Like, I'll get up there and preach.
Yeah, I agree. That's I've been itching for a while to talk some old school classic good wrestling that I haven't got to talk with anyone with for a while, because I miss talking with JJ about good wrestling like that. But this right here, I want to start off here on the first match right here. I like the name of this, the Chi-Town Rumble, because it was in Chicago, and that was on February 20th, 1989. So the first match in the series of 3 was Ric Flair as the NWA champion versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat at the time, he was at 5'11", 235. Ric Flair at 6 foot at 232. Almost, just about there. Flair had just a couple more, a few more inches of height on him, but their weight was almost about the same. So this pretty much was almost like an even matchup.
They're flip sides of the coin in so many ways. The booking on this was, putting those two guys together, the way they put that together was spot on. Mm-hmm. What they did with Steamboat, we'll talk about in a second. But yeah. But the putting those two guys together, peanut butter and jelly, man.
Yeah,
give me a sandwich.
Now, one of the things I do want to add to this, Jim, is the fact that as we talk about these three matchups in this trilogy, there was one constant guy on commentary. And it was one of my favorites, Jim Ross. He got to call all 3 of these matches, but he had different people at the time with him as he called this match, and then the second match, the third match out of the trilogy. But Jim Ross, just his emotion in this first matchup was just great at the moments, because it was just raw energy. And JR's commentary style is, he did not want to know what the finish was. He wanted to be surprised just like everybody else watching it, which that's one quality I love about JR when he calls a match. He don't want to know the finish. He wants to see it unfold, the story unfold in the ring.
He wants to pop too. He wants to pop with everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame the guy for that. I love that. I love that, because I want to throw this in there. I've had experience where I've done commentary before, and they wanted. I said, no, don't tell me the finish. I don't want to know the finish. I want to watch it unfold in front of me. But I agree right there. But
in the excitement and the adrenaline, your mouth may slip and you may give something away before. So it's better off to go in not knowing the end of it. You know what I mean? Exactly.
It's best not to know. But the beginning of this match.
I'm sorry. Let me also throw this out there. Tommy Young, also the one man that's connected with all 3 matches. Tommy Young was the referee for all 3 of those matches.
Yes.
Great old school referee. Always in the right place at the right time. You know what I mean? Didn't let the guys get over on him. maintained his spot. I think even at one time, I can't remember which match it was, but him and Flair get into it at one point. And I'm pretty sure it's this one because he's got the big Illinois symbol pinned to his lapel of his referee coat or his referee shirt. And I'm pretty sure that him and Flair get into that, and Flair pokes at his chest, and Tommy Young pokes back at him and slaps the Illinois, I'm the referee. So it's good that they maintain that continuity so Tommy Young's not looking like a goof.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he did great as a referee in this trilogy of matches right here.
He was great, hands down, but he was the perfect guy to do this.
He was. It seemed like, Jim, everything was aligned for this right here to tell a great story with a great feud that lasted, in this trilogy here. But
sometimes that happens.
It does, man. Everything aligned like perfectly because to me, there's matches or people that's tried to come close to this, but you can only capture lightning once in a bottle. That's it.
Yeah.
That's definitely it. So, as this match get ready to start up, they lock up. There's some lock up there at the beginning of this match here. After the tie-up, Steamboat hits the ropes, and there's a lot of coming off the ropes and shoulder blocks. Flair, falls, and he tries for quick pins. Steamboat, same thing. And there's some headlock takedown. There's a lot of action on the mat, at the beginning of this match here because it's kind of pacing itself there. But what I love is
they're also setting up story too, because one of the things I noticed that whenever they were doing the chops, because both these guys had amazing cardio, but in order for one guy to not look dominant over the other and one guy not to get played high over the other, they were doing just like you said. One person would do one thing, the other person would come back. If they would go to the corner post, Flair would throw the chop, and then Steamboat would immediately spin him around and throw a knife edge, and they would go back and forth like that. So you'd and Ross sold it so well, you know what I mean? Like it was saying that they were telling the story that I'm just as good as you are, and this is before Steamboat had the belt. So they're telling that Steamboat's in the chase, and that's a Southern gimmick in itself right there, chasing the title. So Crockett done it so well, man. Yeah, they done it so well.
He did.
Yeah, they were. People know that we're equal. You're not better than me, and I'm not better than you. And this is going to be. They were setting the tone for the whole thing.
That's what I love. You mentioned the chops there. That was the next thing I was going to mention. As soon as Flair does the chop, Steamboat comes right back, and the crowd is like, whoa, because I don't think at that time that anyone gave it back to Flair right away. It was like almost no sell. It's like Flair, like you said, they were both in physical shape. Flair, man, he was in great shape. Steamboat was in great shape. And Steamboat just giving it back to Flair. That was something right there. I still pop over that. I'm like, whoa, when I watch this.
Flair showed more. I'm trying to say this without messing up. More vulnerability. I didn't want to mess up my words. He showed more vulnerability in this match than he did with a lot of other guys in title matches. You know what I mean? Like the champion, and Flair's well known for putting guys over. Whenever you wrestle Flair, you're going to look just as good. He might win, but you're going to look better than ever. You know what I mean? So they're used to doing that, and Steamboat rose to that occasion as well. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, like Steamboat early on, he keeps Flair grounded with headlocks, and then Flair comes off the ropes and gets chopped, and tumbles out of the ring. Flair, I like how when Flair gets out of the ring, he kind of paces himself there, and the crowd, man, they're just booing him because he gets out. He's doing what a heel would: get out of the ring and kind of collect himself and
milk it.
Yeah, milked it. He milked it. He's getting heat, man. Flair is getting heat, which I love. He's getting so much heat on himself on this, and the crowd's just eating this up, man. Flair and Steamboat have the crowd by this time in their hands, and so they're invested. This crowd is invested in this, and I just love how Flair is out there. I love how Steamboat, is not jumping out there to go after him, chase him. He's pacing himself. He's waiting for Flair to come back in the ring. But, Steamboat's wanting to get on him on the ref. He's doing his job. And then as soon as Flair comes back in, everything resumes there. Flair, he does a snapmare. He pulls his knee pad down and drops that knee to the face when he pulls down the knee pad.
So smooth with the knee drop. So smooth the way, he floats that in there.
Yeah. It's
artwork, man. Watching guys like that wrestle, it's artwork.
It is, and they're towards that first part there. I mean, it's starting to build up, and then almost towards the end of the match, then you start seeing these double arm suplexes. Both of them. Steamboat delivering it to Flair delivering it to Steamboat. And one of the things I don't want to forget is this part here. I've just like you, I marked out over this when I see it, when I'm watching this here. Flair gets thrown into the turnbuckle. He flips over. Yes. He runs down the outside. He climbs top and leaps at Steamboat. And Steamboat counters to the crossbody for a pin.
Yeah, man. everything that they sewed together in those series of matches with the Flair was at his height as a bumping heel champion. And that was one of the things that made him so great, the way he would sell for guys. And he would take the big hanging over backdrops and the big hanging over slams off the top rope. And you see Flair take some serious bumps in this series of matches, for sure.
Yeah.
But the more they're just setting up this, you can tell in this first match that you can really see the magic happening more so than the other two, because the other two, I'm not discounting the other two, but this is the first time these two guys have really mixed it up, and you can kind of see them playing off each other that very first time, and they're like, oh shit, we really can, there really is something going. And then that's when they realize the whole we've got lightning, a tiger by the tail, if you will, you know what I mean?
Yes.
They realize that this shit is going to be serious. So you can kind of see that in some of the stuff that they do, but by that second match, it's yeah.
Yeah.
And then the third match kind of goes down from there, though. For me, the third match was a little bit more of a letdown, even in the post-match promo. But we'll talk about all that if you want to go match at a time.
Yeah, I want to go match at a time there and just talk about moments there and stuff. One of the moments out of this first match was the figure four. The figure four. As soon as Flair puts on the figure four, and as soon as he puts it on there, man, the crowd, you hear the crowd popping, you hear some boos, you hear some cheering. And one thing I want to point out real quick is, since they were in Chicago, you had a couple of NFL players from the Chicago Bears there, and one of them was a Four Horsemen fan, Ric Flair fan. So he was cheering. Right in the front row.
Right in the front row. Yeah,
right in the front row there. And what I loved about this, Jim, was when Flair had Steamboat, dirtiest player in the game. He had Steamboat in the figure four. He was close by the ropes. So when the ref was not looking, when he was checking on Steamboat, what's Flair doing?
I love heels. I love heels so much more than the baby faces. I was definitely behind Flair. Yeah, and Tommy Young, that's one other reason we said earlier with the way he made himself believable. Shit like that could be happening right. Like, he could be down here and it could be happening up there and he don't see it. But it's like he's so in the match and he's just so credible and everything. It's not hokey. It doesn't look goofy. You know what I mean? It looks, they do. They play it perfectly. And Flair was good at that. He was a master of that. But yeah, man, he was all about playing into that damn rope. Yeah, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was great until Tommy caught him, and then he made Flair break it. But one thing I loved about this was why he's doing it. Jim Ross is sitting there, and he's like, "Come on, ref! Look what Flair's doing!" And the crowd starts chanting, "Steamboat, Steamboat, Steam." I mean, right there, it's just all of a sudden Steamboat, he's getting that pop from the crowd. They want Steamboat to win this title. They want to see Flair get defeated. They wanted to see Steamboat take that NWA World Heavyweight Championship away from Flair, which is so great because at this time, man, this match is pretty much been going on for quite a while, and the crowd is so invested in wanting Steamboat to win. And then,
at this point in the match, you've gone over the hump, and Flair is putting Steamboat over to the finish, to where they're heading to the finish. You know what I mean? Like, he's got to walk away with Steamboat raised up and him, being pushed, being stomped away, and the crowd hating him even more, but so he can come back and go again. But he's putting Steamboat over to make him that consummate baby face. It's one of the reasons I'm a heel guy. It's one of the reasons I don't care for Steamboat very much. He was so bubblegum and such a baby face. But a lot of times in matches like this, you give credit to the champion and you want to put everything on him as he's the reason it was so good. But Steamboat and Flair worked together so well. Steamboat sold that so well with the agony and looking to the fans and the pain and not wanting to quit. And Jim Ross was in there too, talking about how strong he was. Any other man would have quit by now. All that stuff. They're building him up. It was classic storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
Storytelling.
Storytelling.
Spot hitting.
Yes, there was
spot hitting.
Yeah, it was storytelling in the ring because both guys were telling that story there, because Flair wanted, from what I get, this is how I view this first outing right here for this NWA World Heavyweight Championship, was Flair wanted to keep that title. He was going to do anything and everything in his power to keep that title. He wasn't going to let Steamboat take it. Hell no, he ain't going to let Steamboat take it. He's going to have to beat him down to take that title. And
earn it.
Yeah, he was gonna earn it, man. Like Flair said, to beat a man, you gotta beat the man. And Steamboat was beating him to try to, get that title. But there's one moment where the crowd really did pop, was when Flair comes off the ropes and crossbodies a Steamboat. Both men tumble over the top of the ring, outside the ring there, and it was like a holy shit moment, right there. The crowd was eating that up right there at that moment. Those acrobatic
tumbles of Flair, man, and Steamboat was right there with him. Yeah. That was good.
That was good. And one of my other favorite parts of this match was the dirty pin by Flair. Flair, when they get back in the ring there, Flair trying to go for a pin, and he's using the ropes for leverage. And Steamboat keeps kicking out, and the ref don't see this. Tommy does not see this.
It's wonderful.
It is.
Wonderful. It just builds Steamboat up more and more and more and more.
Yeah, he definitely is. He's pretty much
he got
really
Hero Matsuda on the outside, smacking the apron and doing his whole.
I
mean? And he doesn't ever really get involved, but he's vocal.
Yeah, he's vocal. He's vocal. And then there's one point where, in one moment, I do want to point out where Flair calls Steamboat right back in the middle of the ring. He's like, "You come here," and it's one of those great moments right there. Some trash talk, and Flair gives the Steamboat right there.
Yeah, he's like, "You want it? Come on." Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. The crowd was popping over that right there, and then
feel greatness.
And then Flair decides to go. He goes for the figure four. Steamboat counters into a small package for the pin, and at this time the ref gets knocked out. Flair goes for the figure four. Steamboat counters into the small package for the pin. Another ref comes in. 1, 2, 3. Steamboat has beat Ric Flair and has captured the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And the place...
The fans bust their nut. Yeah. They milked it so well.
They did.
And knew just what to do.
They did.
The other referee was the Playa. From SmackDown. He was SmackDown GM, Playa.
Oh, Teddy Long. Yeah.
Teddy Long was the other referee. But he had the little hair ring. Yeah, Teddy still had a little bit of hair. That was their bitch. that was immediately Hero's bitch. He got in. He's not the referee. And they were saying it to Tommy Young once Tommy Young got up because, you know what I mean? But then if you pay attention, you can see Flair, and he goes up to Tommy Young, and it looks like he's bitching at him. But if you see Flair, he kind of covers his mouth when he talks to him a little bit. And after he gets done doing that, Tommy Young immediately goes and raises Steamboat's hand. So Flair knew, man. Flair knew that crowd, and he knew how to add to it. He's like, I guarantee whenever he put his hand up, he's like, go raise his hand. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I guarantee he put Tommy onto that because it just made it that much more. Because then, no, I say he's the champion too, not just Teddy. You know what I mean? I'm saying he's a champion. And that was, and that put Steamboat over, you know?
It did.
And really put him in a marquee role to carry the company of someone. They wanted that babyface champion to carry the company against Hogan and those guys. And we're talking again 1989. This is we're going into a downtime in wrestling, into a few years where the product wasn't as good, pre-Undertaker, all that stuff. Like, it wasn't as great in those times, you know? So Ricky Steamboat, while he may have been a really great in-ring worker and could could talk a promo, I don't think he was a caliber of wrestler to carry that company forwards. And I think that the office realized that. He only had that belt 3 months. I think the office realized, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't even think it was that long. I don't even think it was 3 months. It was a very short time from the time he took this belt at the first of this series until Flair finally gets it back at the end.
Yeah.
You know? But
do you think it was one of those ideas, Jim, where it looked good on paper, it sounded good, but when they follow through with it and the reality of it, they realize, nah, this is not what we thought it would be? Do you think it was one of those scenarios there?
Well, it's the reason that I wanted to put a little bit of a foundation at the beginning of this when I talked about Ricky Steamboat and the altercations he had in the WWF, because I think the same type of thing may have happened in this scenario. I think he may have believed some of the hype people around him and let that ego get to him. And Flair is a massive ego too. So there could have been, I'm not saying that's what happened, I'm just speculating, but behind the scenes it could have been some, well, I'm just as good as you and I just proved it, even though Flair put him over. You know what I mean? And there could have been some Flair wanting the belt back for himself, seeing Steamboat get over. There could have been some egotistical, personal rivalry there, competition-based, not like the fact that they didn't like each other, because I'm sure they did. But the babyface gimmick that they go into with Steamboat in this series of matches is one of the reasons that I dislike Steamboat, and I'll go ahead and touch on that. Not Steamboat the man, because I understand he holds high esteem amongst his friends, very respectable, and that doesn't come lightly. And I love his in-ring work. But the fact that he never worked heel is something that has always bothered me. Like, I'm never going to consider Steamboat one of the greatest of wrestlers because he only ever worked babyface. And I understand there was a couple of times in his career with Ole Anderson in his first run, he wanted to do a little babyface work there in Georgia, and Ole wouldn't turn him. And I think the same thing happened here this time. I think after this series of matches, he wanted to go and do a little bit of heel work, and they wouldn't turn him there either. It was either there or Pat Patterson wouldn't do it, one or the other. He's never been able to flip that coin, and only great workers, really great workers, in my opinion, can do both.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. And then they just shove it down your throat so much with this, he brings his kid to the ring and his wife to the ring. But it was the family man versus the playboy, because Flair had girls that he brought to the ring too. But it was just me being a heel. Whenever I saw it, it just made me sick. He's bringing this little kid to the ring, and he's got the little dragon outfit on and all that stuff. This was the second match that we're about to lead into.
Yes.
And his wife's wearing the big flowing ball gown and all this shit. And you can just tell that at some point, and I'm not going to throw this blame on his wife because I don't know the lady, somebody was pushing for Ricky Steamboat to get all this extra shit.
Yeah,
you know I mean? Like
someone was. Someone
Steamboat or his wife or somebody or Hurd or someone, you know what I mean? But I just can't get past that. And that's one of the things about the Steamboat run of these 3 matches. Like, he did a good job coming off as a babyface, but I dislike babyfaces so much it turned me against this whole babyface run that he did. The in-ring work that they did was magic.
Yes.
And every time I see him toting that little kid to the ring, it makes me want to puke.
Yeah, and you're right, because the second their second match in this trilogy was at Clash of the Champions, Raging Cajun, on April 2nd, 1989, and it was Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And
this was in New Orleans as well. And
yes.
Again, I don't know if they're trying to mess with Watts because he wouldn't come over and book for them, but they've already used the theme song from Mid-South in the pay-per-view before as the Chi-Town Rumble theme. And now at the very next event, here they are in New Orleans at the Superdome in one of Watts's biggest towns that he ran in the Mid-South market, you know? I think they're trying to tantalize Bill. I think they're like, look, Bill, if you're not going to come work with us, we're going to use all your shit.
Yeah. I never really thought of it that way, but you pull up a good point there.
It's all kinds of stuff. I'm like Randy Savage. There's all kinds of stuff going and working, you know? Like there's all kinds of shit happening, you know?
Yeah.
And then this match, they had one of the biggest Mid-South feuds ever. They revived at this particular Clash of Champions. Butch Reed, Junkyard Dog.
Yes.
Those guys fought at this show. And you had Michael Hayes was working commentary with Watts. So you had Michael Hayes talking all kinds of references from his days there, you know? So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's I wanted to throw this in there because I remember, like, my father. I mentioned about my father. My brother was more WCW, and of course, you know, during that time on this, you know, like Dusty Rhodes would say, on the 605 on the Superstation, the TBS.
Yeah.
My dad and my brother was right there, and I remember watching Clash of the Champions when they would air it on TBS at 605. I remember watching that there, and I do, if I think back at this time here, because I was pretty young at that time. I was probably about 11, maybe 12 at the time. I do remember most of watching Clash of the Champions, and for some reason I can't, as the years have gone by, Jim, I might have seen this as a kid, but I had to go back and of course watch it, and a lot of stuff in this match sticks out to me as like a kid when I seen this as a kid, but okay. I had to refresh myself, like watching it like you did, just watching this right here, this second 2 out of 3 falls match. And like you said,
a couple years on you, brother. I think I was a senior in high school when this was happening. So I got a couple years on you there.
Yeah.
So we were sneaking smokes and drinking beers when we weren't supposed to. You know what I mean? Stuff like that, chasing the girls. So I was watching the wrestling at the same time. I was into the Clash of Champions. I had kind of started to reel back from the WWF at that time, like I have now. It got to a point where I couldn't watch it back then until Taker really blossomed.
Yeah.
In the mid-'90s and all that stuff happened. 96, I started watching it again. But WCW, man, like, that was something you could sit down and watch with your buddies and hoot and holler and have a good time and still get marky a little bit because it wasn't that cartoon shit. Guys were still getting color. You know what I mean? It was still, you know what I mean? They were putting the sport out there. They were making it more of a sport type deal. So,
yeah,
I enjoyed Clash of Champions. And then there's a side note. I like throwing little nuggets. This Clash of Champions, if I'm not mistaken, was, if not the first, the second appearance of the Great Muta, accompanied by Gary Hart.
Okay, the Great Muta, man, a Great Muta, because he made quite a bit of appearances in WCW from from Japan, correct?
He would own the next year and a half or so of that programming as far as Clash of Champions. He was one of the guys that was always highlighted in the main events of that stuff. And then Gary Hart, Terry Funk, and Muta formed the J-Tex Corporation. This is after, we'll get to Terry Funk shortly, though.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah.
But this all of that follows everything else.
Yes, it definitely does there. It definitely does. So, what I like about this here, the stuff I pointed out out of this match, is that Steamboat, he picks out a body part and he works it. And again, we got headlock takedowns. And Flair builds momentum by chopping Steamboat again in the corner. It was almost like what we kind of seen in the first outing. Steamboat firebacks again out of the corner and goes back to headlock takedowns again. It's almost kind of the same thing, but there's some things that they changed up. And a little tidbit here is that a lot of people didn't know that before their trilogy here, Steamboat and Flair already wrestled each other almost 7 days a week. So they pretty much was familiar with each other, but doing something big on a grander stage like this was something right there for the storytelling of of this trilogy here.
It builds the market. You're building up your market at every one of these little cities that you go do that match at. And back in the days before nationwide programming, you could wrestle a match on one side of the state. You're from Florida, right? You're in Florida. You could wrestle a match in Clearwater and the fans in Clearwater wouldn't know about it in Tampa or Miami, because there was enough of a gap there where it may be on the television in each one of those markets separately, but you're building up that whole market as a whole itself by having these little shots. It's the whole philosophy of build your territory. You know what I mean? And they did it so well, especially in the Southeast, man.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah, they did it so well. And it pretty much, this beginning was almost like the first match there. But after 19 minutes, Flair rolls up Steamboat into a small package after coming off the ropes for the first pinfall there. Flair works on Steamboat's legs using the figure four. Of course, that's the thing about Flair I liked, was he'd work on those legs, and by the time he was ready, he'd lock that figure four on you. He'd lock that son of a bitch on you there, and it's you ain't going nowhere.
He waited too. He would work it. He would do the drop the knee, pick them up and drop their shins on his knees and stuff. Do that classic move where he does that, or take them to the ropes and lay their leg would be across the bottom rope. He'd do the jump up and drop his knee on it. You know what I mean? He knew ways to build on it. And then again, you had a good announcer, and whether it be Soley or Ross or whoever that's in the background talking about the punishment that Flair's working that leg, he's tenderizing that leg. So you knew where they were going with it, and that's part of that cyclical story in your mind where they keep you going. They're throwing the bits out to you. Mm-hmm. They're not just trying to make big, huge bumps and that's it.
Right.
The 2 out of 3 falls led itself to. It was an Iron Man match without it being called an Iron Man match. The thing went an hour. Mm-hmm. I was watching it the other night, and I noticed it was almost right at an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a long time, if I'm not mistaken, before that first fall landed too. So they stretched that out there.
Yeah, it was about 19 minutes. I have on my notes right here, 19 minutes, and then right there, Flair gets the first fall, and then. Again, Flair uses the ropes as leverage when covering Steamboat again for the pinfalls. Steamboat switches up to some high-flying moves for offense. Now, which I didn't notice. You didn't see too much in their first one. Steamboat all of a sudden starts switching it up and using some high flying stuff, and it's like, okay.
They said, I think it was I just said his name too. The Freebird, Michael Hayes. I think it was he said it in commentary. He's letting the dragon fly. He's let loose with the dragon. You know what I mean? They were building that whole. They were running with that whole deal. But I don't know specifically when it was in the match, and we had talked about it earlier. But one of my favorite things about this series of matches is like the first match we talked about just a few minutes ago. Like I said, you could see the flashes of them just doing things spontaneously and figuring out that they could work together. And in this one, you see a lot more stuff that they've laid out. It's not as laid out as what the Savage Steamboat match was in Mania 3. You can see where things are more laid out. And one of the things they did that I truly, truly love, and it doesn't matter how many times I see it, I pop every time I see it. Flair's got the gimmick where he gets thrown into the corner post and he does the flip over.
Yes.
Now, most of the time, on most guys, he does the flip over. He'll run down the apron, climb up the other side, and do a big knee drop or get picked up and slammed off the other side. The guy will catch him, and that's how they played that little spot off. But these two guys have a unique spot that they did together where Ricky Steamboat was so fast and had that knife-edge chop. He threw Flair to the corner into the turnbuckle. Flair did the flip over, was running down the apron, and Steamboat was poised halfway down the road. For all he had to do was spin around and it knife-edged Flair and dropped him right there mid-apron, and it was so fluid and so beautiful. And every time I see it, man, there's certain things in the business that go all the way back to the 60s with Ray Stevens and old matches, but there's certain things that when I see it, it makes me smile on my face and in my heart for this business because it is so beautiful to see. It's fluid. There's no error anywhere. Everything is perfect, and you don't see that perfection very often. And in that one little spot, that one little move, you see that perfection between the two of them, that synergy that makes them a great pairing. It is,
and lightning in a bottle, man. You couldn't replicate that again, even if you tried. Well, Flair and Steamboat would be the only ones that could replicate that, but lightning in a bottle there, because it was like you said, just so spontaneous. Flair and Steamboat called it in the ring and stuff. And do you believe that as many times as they wrestled each other, that they pretty much was familiar with each other, what they were thinking, what was going to be next? Do you believe that, Jim?
Whenever Steamboat had made his very first run through the Southeast, when he was first cutting in, Flair would do matches in different territories where local guys would get a shot or young guys would get a shot. And they had actually wrestled, I believe it was in Florida earlier on, whenever he was working with Youngblood down there in the tag team. I believe Flair came through and they had booked it out to where Steamboat and Flair had wrestled each other. I don't know if it was part of a tag match or singly, but I know that they had prior hands-on contact with one another in the ring to this. So, and then after that first match and all the little stuff they did back at the beginning and at the end of March, 1st of April, when Steamboat first came in the territory, you could tell. I mean, I don't want to sound like I know, like, because I've been in the ring, but I know these guys that work together like that can tell when someone is right there when they need to be, and you ain't got to tell them, and they feed off you, you feed off them, and that everything comes together, and it's seamless. Like you say, that doesn't happen very often, and they had it here. And both those guys were at their peaks physically, you know what I mean? They're both late 30s, early 40s maybe, in their 30s at this time, got to be for sure for Flair.
Right.
So, like, they're physically at their peak to where they can go. And we mentioned earlier the cardio. Flair's famous for doing an hour on the Stairmaster or the treadmill before he starts his workout. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So whenever you get two guys together like that, you keep saying lightning in a bottle. And every time I hear Dusty in the back, it's lightning in a bottle, babies. We got to put them together in the ring and let some magic happen.
That's where I got where I got that from listening to Dusty and stuff talking about there.
Lightning in a bottle, baby. Yeah,
lightning in a bottle. Lightning in a bottle. So at this time, Jim, Flair has one pinfall over Steamboat, and then Steamboat gets Flair into the chicken wing submission, and he ends up winning the second pinfall right there. So it's 1-1 at this time. And
the Bob Backlund finish, the double chicken wing.
The chicken wing.
Yeah, the double chicken wing. At least to pick somebody. I mean, there are a few moves where the other guy that you're working is only going to be able to help you so much. You know what I mean? He's picking Flair up. That's dead. He's dead weighting him. You know what I'm saying? He's got his hands behind his back. His feet are dangling. There's no way that Flair's helping him there. So, like, the double chicken wing is a dead weight, serious strength cardio move. And to be a second fall finisher, you got to give it up to Steamboat for being able to pull it off and not stumble or, he held him up there for a good few.
Oh, God, yeah.
I love that finish.
It is. It's Bob Backlund uses that move right there. Of course, I mean Bob Backlund, and there's one other worker I can think of that uses it nowadays. Marty Scurll from he uses the chicken wing. I seen him wrestle live there when he was in ROH there, and when he was about to take it home, and people knew, and when he'd set it up there, the crowd was hollering chicken wing, and he'd lock it on there. He's the only guy, modern wrestler, I know that uses that there, besides Bob Backlund, and here in this match here with Steamboat using it on Flair there. But after that second fall, Flair continues to work on Steamboat's legs. He's working his legs, which was different from the first match there, because you've seen pretty much in the first match, in the first off there, he was chopping in the corner to towards the taking it home there. Flair hit the figure four, but now Flair is definitely doing a heel, working a body part. If to me a good heel, Jim, is when they pick out a part and they work it, and the crowd boos them, and they trash talk the crowd, they trash talk the face, and this was right here. This was great. He's working on those legs, and he knew to weaken Steamboat to set him up for the figure four. Steamboat. It
ties Matsuda too, because people that know Hiro Matsuda see him outside the ring, and he's slapping the ring and telling Flair, yeah, that's right. Matsuda was famous for stretching guys in Florida. He's the one that broke Hulk Hogan's leg to see if Hulk Hogan wanted to stay in the business or not.
Yes.
So for people that know the business, whenever Flair's really working one singular body part, it sings of a Matsuda. So that really ties him in right there and works it well together. I like that.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's great. To me, it's great in-ring psychology there, because that way you get a reaction, you get heat on yourself. You're a heel. For me, if whatever applied to what finish I would do, I would work that body part, and I would just keep going at that part where the crowd's like, for heaven's sakes, taking the Gorilla Monsoon, reference there. Heaven's sakes, brain. But he would it, and that it was perfect. It was perfect. Flair being a heel. I mean, you can't get any better than that right there at this moment, right there in this match there. And
if I'm not mistaken, I really don't remember these guys getting a lot of color, or any color at all, in any of these matches. I know that Steamboat wouldn't have, because he's a baby. I mean, he's such a baby face, but I don't remember that any of these guys using color to get over. They didn't need to. You know what I mean? They didn't need to do that. They had enough on their own.
Yeah, the psychology of this match it was great, because this one right here, out of the three, again, this would be my favorite one, the 2 out of 3 falls match out of the trilogy here, because I mean, I like the first one, but the second one in this trilogy was great, because 2 out of 3 falls, 60 minutes, both men in both physical shape, going the distance right here, putting on a great match, great story in the ring, which is just amazing. And pretty much, again, right here at this time, like you said, Flair, he flips off the turnbuckle, he runs down the ring apron next to turnbuckle, and he lands a flying crossbody to Steamboat, man, which was amazing. That part right there, and just the crowd was.
You got to see so many of the Flair's little pieces in this with the chops. Steamboat would chop him, and Flair would do the feint, the straight feint, face down into the mat, and fall right down into the mat, and the back and forth exchanges and the quick ring rope work, or up and over and around, and like the presence of the ring is an understated fact. You know what I mean? And great wrestlers, you don't see great wrestlers stumbling around. The ring presence that Flair always knows where he's at, can spin in, spin out, and around. And Steamboat the same way. They're so equally matched there as well. The ring presence is great between these guys, and it's for stuff like this, and that spot that we were just talking about with the spin around knife edge. You know, just knowing where to be and when to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just their timing and their footwork was just great.
Crisp.
It just
crisp.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. It was like boom, boom, boom. It was great. You hear the expression "dance partner." These guys were dancing, and then they were on fire at this point.
If you could ever use that terminology, this is it. This is one of those times.
Yes,
they were definitely dancing.
Yes, because Flair, when it came to parts of this match, Flair, he was in the right spot at the right time. Steamboat, right spot, right time. Because again, lightning in a bottle, baby.
2 3/4 kickouts, like they knew, like that. And Tommy Young too. Like you can't discount. Like we popped Tommy Young earlier, but there's good referees, and then there's really good referees that know, again, ring presence, and he was always right there. The way he would jump over, some guy would go for a pin or something, he would jump over the top of him and land for Alfonso was great for that too.
Yeah.
But like Tommy Young would jump around, and he was almost not a bumping referee, but he was all over, man. He was a jackrabbit.
Oh, yeah. Tommy made sure he was right there to get that pin, to count for that pin when needed. He was great at that there. And Flair gets Steamboat into a sleeper, and he grounds Steamboat. Steamboat gets grounded. Oh, no. Okay. Steamboat gets Flair into the chicken wing submission. Again, Steamboat's like, okay, it worked the first time, we're going back to it. I mean, if it's going to work, it worked first time, let's do it again. So he gets him in that chicken wing submission, and Steamboat knee buckles, and both men fall to the mat with their both shoulders down. And of course, Tommy, the ref, don't see Flair's leg on the rope, and Steamboat's shoulders are down as well. I mean, everything was just right there to where it was like Steamboat, Flair, and he does the count, but Flair argues.
Yeah, Hero's on
Hero.
it.
Yeah, they were arguing.
He was pointing his finger. Hey.
Yeah, and the ref, I mean, they went back and forth there and stuff, and the commentary was just, with Jim Ross and Hayes, and it's just like, hey. And the ref declared Steamboat the winner out of the 2-3 falls match, and Flair just,
one more way to keep that story alive and to keep those two to be able to continue working and continue drawing money. I don't know for sure who booked that finish, but it was a little bit cloudy. But it was good to continue the storyline on. I like the fact that it was 2 out of 3 falls because essentially you got 3 little matches, So this is really the only time you see these two guys get a good series, a good run together. So it's a series of 3 matches, but the second match is like 3 little ones in its own. You know what I memean? So, and the fact that it went an hour.
Yes. Yeah, it did. And it went on to the following month at WrestleWar 89 on May 7th, the final match there. Now, what can you let the viewers and the listeners know about WrestleWar 89 that they probably wouldn't know about here? Because like you said, Clash of Champions, Raging Cajun, there were some good matches on that card there. What other matches do you say that on this right here that people should know about besides this match here?
I'll be honest, I can't remember any off the top of my head. So if there's anything you have specifically that you want to look at, we can. That's that Colorado memory loss. The match itself was the one it was set in Nashville. And this is the one that Flair was recently. This is the match that they're citing back to, that they're going to be in Nashville for this Starrcade coming up. This is the culmination of this 3-part series, and this is I can't remember specifically any other matches. I did watch their match off of that show. I know it was the very first WrestleWar. The very first time they had used that as a pay-per-view gimmick, the WrestleWar theme. And Sting was in there. Sting was fighting for the TV title on that show. But they had taken Flair and Steamboat on that show, and as well as on the one that we just watched, that we just talked about, the Clash. The main event didn't come at the end of the night. They ran those matches midway through the card, so they didn't get chopped at the end because they didn't know for sure how long those guys were going to go. So the matches that came after, I think on that Clash of Champions there was 2 matches, a Barry Windham match and a Sting match that was set to come after that Flair and Steamboat match, and because the match went an hour and went so long, they had to re-show those matches on television, like on the weekly TV the following week.
Okay.
So they centered up those matches on the card because they weren't sure how long they were going to run.
Okay.
Well, who else was on that card? Have you got it in front of you?
Yes, I do. I pulled it up right here on my computer right here. They had 9 matches on here. They had the Great Muta with Gary Hart going up against Doug Gilbert with Eddie Gilbert. And
can't go wrong with the Great Muta.
Nope. Then you had Butch Reed. He went up against Ranger Ross.
Okay. I remember the Ranger Ross gimmick. Babyface, military guy.
Right. Then Dick Murdoch went up against Cowboy, or I still call him that, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., with Gary Hart. He was with him on that. And then
Murdoch match is always good.
Yep. Then you had Dynamic Dudes. Johnny Ace and Shane Douglas went up against the Samoan SWAT team, Fatu and Samu, I think, with Paulie Dangerously. Paul Heyman there.
I love the Samoan SWAT team back in the day. A young Rikishi was Fatu.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a young Rikishi. But now that you mentioned the Dynamic Dudes, we're obviously still in the Jim Herd era, and the booking committee is not quite taken over yet because he was the dumbass that put together the Dynamic Dudes.
A lot of people, you're not the first person to say that, Jim. A lot of people didn't really give 2 shits about the Dynamic Dudes.
Oh, man. Laurinaitis was, like, Shane Douglas was the only thing that came out of that,
yes.
that duo.
Shane.
I mean? Laurinaitis Laurinaitis is the famous office guy, Johnny Ace, that they're always giving shit to, that's fucking shit up right now. But
Johnny Laurinaitis there. Big Johnny Laurinaitis. As Enzo Amore would call him, Johnny Laurinaitis. Withholding information to his boss, Vince McMahon, about Sasha Banks and Naomi. Another story, another time.
Johnny Ace had a run with the sheep herders, but was the Bushwhackers. They ran as the sheep herders for a while in WCW, and Johnny Ace was their flag bearer. He would wave the New Zealand flag, and he was like their little manager guy. He had a really strong run in Japan, and I think the reason he had Johnny Ace, we're talking about all kinds of good stuff. I think the reason Johnny Ace had such a strong run in Japan is the reason he's got a strong run in the office in WWE. If you listen to what Cornette will tell you, Cornette will say that it's because he looks good in a suit and he's got a nice smile. Yeah. He's a big blonde white guy. I think that's why he had a good run in Japan, because his work didn't get any better as the plane flew from one country to the next. He was still the shits, but over there, he was a marketable gimmick. Guys could work with him, Yeah. Even if he was the shits, he could still draw money.
Exactly there. Exactly. And he can pick out, divas that can't wrestle out of a lingerie catalog. So that's another plus.
He married up too. He married up when he married that Bella's mom. He definitely married up.
Do you honestly? Let me ask you this. Do you think when he was looking through the lingerie catalog and he saw the Bella twins, he said to himself, he's like, I wonder what their mother looks like. I wonder if she's hot just like them.
I can only believe that's part of the reason they got their job, not their mom being their mom. But I'd be willing to bet, they call Edge the ultimate opportunist, but Johnny Laurinaitis I'm sure he's seen their mom at some kind of a function and put the radar on her and cut her from the herd,
Yeah. He probably went up there and gave a speech to her about people power. I don't know.
Smile in a suit,
But
magic in a suit.
Magic in a suit. I'll tell you who looks good in a suit, and I mean he just looks good because he's pretty much a free bird, and that's Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes had a match on this card too here, Jim. He had Hero with him, and he went up against Lex Luger, the total package there, Lex Luger. Michael Hayes did. And it was for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. And Sting, he went up against the Iron Sheik. And Iron Sheik had Rip Morgan with him, and that was for the, again, like you mentioned, the NWA World Television Championship. And then, besides Flair and Steamboat on this card here, you had the Road Warriors going up against the Varsity Club with Mike Rotunda, early IRS, and Steve Williams, Dr. Death Steve Williams, if I'm correct there, because when I see
guy that never really lived up to his potential, really, and not in the business anyway. He never really got any super big pushes, or other than the UWF. Mm-hmm. A lot of bad stuff happened. Like, he was involved in a lot of bad, not like criminally bad, but just bad decisions in the business. You know what I mean? He was involved in a few stinkers, we'll say.
Yeah. Right.
But it seems like Hiro Matsuda's taken over duties as the heel manager.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like.
He is.
With a lot of guys.
He is, man. He's almost like, I was joking with someone one time about Jimmy Hart. I swore it was like almost, I think it was one of the WrestleManias there. It was like every other match, Jimmy Hart was coming back and forth to the ring with at least someone. Yeah. I swear, Jimmy Hart managed a lot of people, and the same thing. I mean, right here, he's coming out to the ring quite a bit here. But these last two matches, what's listed on here, what I'm looking at, Jim, is that after the Road Warriors, because Road Warriors going up against the Varsity Club, It was for the NWA World Tag Team Championships. With Nikia Koloff as the special guest referee. Then you had Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner with Missy Hyatt going up against the Varsity Club, but this time it wasn't with Mike Rotunda and Steve Williams. It was Dan Spivey, if I'm saying that correctly, and Kevin Sullivan for the NWA United States Tag Team Championship.
That was one of Kevin Sullivan's little creations, the Varsity Club, and I really liked it. And when I interviewed Kevin Sullivan back a few years ago, we were talking about all that stuff, and he was like, he said it subsequently too. He's like, we couldn't keep, and he's got that Boston. I can't do the Boston. I'm not going to butcher it. He said we couldn't keep Rick Steiner heel. The crowd turned him babyface, so they ballooned out the Varsity Club and encompassed all these other guys. Dan Spivey was part of the Twin Towers or something? Not the Twin Towers, because that was Akeem and Big Boss Man.
Yes.
Dan Spivey, the Skyscrapers. It was
yes.
Dan Spivey, and I can't remember the guy that was with him.
Yeah, I always forget the other guy. I knew Dan Spivey. Yeah, he was with the Skyscrapers. I always forget the other guy.
He bounced around a lot, right in through there. Like, yeah.
It's always like when I think of Doom, I think of Ron Simmons and of course Teddy Long as the manager, and I always forget Butch Reed. I always forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Butch would have heat on you.
Yeah. But this last match here, like you, Jim, I wasn't too much of a fan of this last one because by this point, the way this match started, it was just like it kind of like was the same formula with the last two matches. How it started up with lockup, off the ropes, shoulder tackle, headlock takedown, and it at this point you can hear the crowd not too much like they were at the beginning when Steamboat won the NWA Heavyweight Championship.
There was a Steamboat sucks chant that happened during this match.
Yeah. It
didn't last for long, but there was a Go Flair. You heard Flair chants and Steamboat sucks chants. I think that they tried to take it one match too many. I think that if they would have ended with the best out of three falls hour-long match, and Flair would have won the title at that match, and they hadn't had the Nashville match, I think it would have been better for the storyline for those guys. Now, they're going to have a good match no matter what. The match quality was there. It was still fun to watch, still entertaining, but like you say, it became predictable. Mm-hmm. They by that third match, 3 matches in 3 months, it became predictable as far as what was going to happen. Now, not with the finish and everything else, and then again, you had at the beginning of the match when they came down to the ring. I got to mention it just because I got to maintain my heel spot on Steamboat for this shit. This is when he came to the ring. The second match, he brought his little son to the ring in a little dragon outfit, and the wife had her ball gown on. In this match, he walks to the ring, and his son is wearing a little outfit with a fake guitar because they're in Nashville, but he's riding on the back of a pony. On the back of a pony. Let me say that again just to make sure in case people didn't catch that the first fucking time. And there's like a person leading the pony down, and his wife, again, decked out like she's going to the Oscars, walking alongside. And I got to say, as a heel, I wanted to see her step in a pile of pony shit so bad and slip and fall. I was begging for it. I was like, please step in some pony shit and fall and bust your ass wearing that dress. That was just my bad guy side coming out. But yeah, it just made me so sick to see that. And I think at this point, the fans were feeling it too.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were tired of having that apple pie mom, family man stuff shoved down their throat, because people like Flair. People in the Southeast loved Flair. Didn't matter who was wrestling. Didn't matter if he was heel or face. People loved Flair no matter what. And people started turning on Steamboat in this match.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, people in the South liked Flair. Everyone except my father. He would cuss every time Flair got on TV. I've mentioned this so many times on this podcast, on my podcast. Flair was my dad was a Dusty Rhodes fan. He loved the American Dream. He hated Flair. He'd cuss up and down, and my brother would ag him on when Flair was on TV. My dad would get lit, and it's like we went through so many TVs growing up, because he'd throw the TV out the front door because Flair is on TV. The neighbors walk by like, TV's out. The Everett's TV's out in the front yard. Hey, Ric Flair must have been on TV.
What time is it? 7:00? Okay.
Yeah. Ric Flair must have been on TV there. And then of course Jim Cornette. My dad did not like Jim Cornette. My dad could stand up and start cussing at the TV because of Jim Cornette. My dad would say, I wish someone would take that racket and shove it up his ass. He just start yelling at me and my brother, we start nagging him on. And it pissed my dad off. My brother would be like, yeah, Cornette.
Whenever I was a little kid, we grew up watching wrestling all through the 80s, 90s, whenever I was younger, 70s even, back to ICW days. And I can remember as a little kid, and this is still to this day, because when I go and visit, I visit my parents once a year now, and sometimes twice, but for sure once a year for about a week. And I always spend time watching wrestling with my father. I watch these matches. I'll bring up some matches, and we'll watch them. And even now, all these years later, he's 72. I'll catch him out of the corner of my eye, and I watch specifically for this. He'll be doing this. Like getting into the match, like marking out. Not marking out like yelling at the TV.
Yeah.
Like whenever the face is making a comeback, or the tag teams have made the hot tag, and Robert Gibson's coming in to save Ricky Morton's ass. He won't say nothing, but man, he'll be air punching the hell out of it. And it just makes me feel so good. It takes you back. It's like plucking you out of your existence and dropping you back as a kid. You know what I mean? And that's one of the great things that wrestling does for us.
Exactly.
Keep history alive.
Exactly. It does. It definitely does. And like you said, Flair was getting more of a face pop, and Steamboat was getting Steamboat sucks chant, because at this time people were pretty much sick of this at this time, though. But the two spots that stick out to me in this match was when Steamboat goes for the dive. Now, this right here was perfect psychology for the fact that when Steamboat goes for the dive at Flair just ducks, and he goes over the top rope. It's like, whoa. Right there. After he's working them down on the mat there, and they come up, Steamboat tries to come, flies at Flair, whoosh, over the top rope. It's like, holy shit. That was like one of my favorite moments for like going over to the top rope. That was a reason why to go over the top rope. That's a reason why for like if you do like a suicide dive, outside the ring or something, you know what I mean? But that moment sticks out right there. And of course, the finish right here. This is the second moment that sticks out, is how they finished this match here, because this match went on for about 40, probably about 35 minutes, because there was some stuff that happened afterwards, which we'll get into here. It was just perfect how that happened there. But the finish of the match was Steamboat goes up, and he has Flair for the body slam. As soon as he picks him up to go for that body slam, Flair rolls over Steamboat. And this is the only time I can think of, Jim, that I've ever seen Ric Flair do anything like this. It's like he rolls him up over into a small package for the win. 1, 2, 3. Flair retains. I think Jim Ross said for the sixth time. I think sixth time he captured the world championship. He captured it that time. And Jim Ross, again, like we mentioned earlier on, he called all three of these matches, but he had different people calling it. Who was with Jim Ross on this one, calling this final match in this trilogy?
This match, they actually had 3 NWA champions sitting at ringside through the whole match that were keeping score, and they were doing it like a boxing match. They were scoring the match as it was going along in case there wasn't a clean finish, so they didn't have the same thing happen with the 2 out of 3 falls. It was Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, and Terry Funk.
Yes.
And they were all sitting ringside. And I don't know if Terry Funk was mic'd up or not, but I'm pretty sure that he was talking to Jim Ross. I believe that he was.
Yes.
Of those 3 guys. I don't remember Thez and O'Connor saying anything, but they were men of few words. They were just fucking, wrap you up in a pretzel if it had to be. But
exactly there. But I find it convenient.
Commentary, I believe.
Who was on commentary?
I think Terry Funk was working a little bit of that commentary with Jim Ross, but I can't remember exactly for sure on that one.
Yeah, but it was pretty convenient that Terry Funk was at ringside during this, because this was a perfect transition into what was next for Ric Flair and Terry Funk.
They built that so well.
Yeah.
Putting Terry Funk at ringside like that, so then they could go right into the next feud. You know what I mean? And the crowd turned Flair babyface a little bit in this match we were talking about. They started cheering Flair and rooting against Steamboat a little bit because they were just tired of seeing the Steamboat. And I think this match may have went a little longer than what it needed to, let's be honest. They could have finished up a little early. The crowd, I think, got tired of it. But Flair was turned babyface then and there by Terry Funk. Mm-hmm. Terry Funk attacks Ric Flair at the end of this match and sets up their next series of matches for the NWA title when you have Flair and Funk. And you see in that match, Flair goes into this match as the heel, Steamboat the babyface, and then by the end of this match, we've got Flair turned and Funk as his next opponent, railing on him. And Terry Funk, I love everything and anything about Terry Funk. He's great.
Of course.
That run that they had there was amazing. Like, it's underrated. Everybody, when you talk about Flair, everybody wants to automatically go to the Dusty match, the Steamboat match, the Harley match. But Flair and Funk had a really good run against each other. And then again, this is the time when you had the formation of Gary Hart, Terry Funk, Great Muta, the J-Tex Corporation, Japan and Texas. So, yeah, this is a lot of heel dynamics shifted in this match. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
A lot of things changed.
Oh, yeah.
As a result of Flair winning and flipping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Steamboat, after his trilogy with Flair here, what happened? Where did Steamboat? What was next for Steamboat? What happened with him?
I'm not sure if Steamboat, again, had people in his ear and started believing his own hype and got a little bit too big for his britches. We'll use that little phrase. But I think that he might have left a bad taste in somebody's mouth, because before long, the next thing you know, he's gone out of that territory. And I don't know if that's when he went to TNA. I don't know if that TNA would have came later. I'm not sure what he did after he left. I would have to look it up. It doesn't set clear in my mind where he went after he left WCW there.
Yeah. Well,
maybe that's whenever he went down into the South. I think he did some matches in the Southeast, I think, a little bit, like down in the areas that were still territories. You know what I mean?
Okay. Now, right here, I'm reading right here. I want to mention this right here, that from what I'm reading right here from the information is that, okay, after winning this is from Wikipedia. This is the information I'm getting from here. After winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Steamboat at Wrestle War, Flair became a fan favorite as he showed respect to Steamboat after the match. Flair began a rivalry with Terry Funk because, Funk attacked Flair, and Funk challenged, for a title shot. This resulted in several potential career-ending injuries for Flair. On the July 1st edition of World Championship Wrestling, Flair announced that he would not retire and agreed to defend the title against Funk at the Great American Bash. Flair defeated Funk to retain the title. And right here it says, after defeating Lex Luger for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship at Wrestle War, Michael Hayes continued to feud with Luger over the title. Now this ties in the Steamboat right here. It says Hayes only held the title for 15 days. Wow. Luger defeated Hayes.
He must have pissed somebody off.
Just something, man. The Office, man. Luger defeated Hayes. Exactly. Luger defeated Hayes for the title on May 22nd. On June 14th edition of Clash of Champions 7, Ricky Steamboat defeated Terry Funk by disqualification when Funk attacked Steamboat with a microphone. After the match, Funk continued to assault on Steamboat until Luger made the save, but then became a villain by attacking Steamboat. He turned heel. And Steamboat himself, for being jealous of not competing on Clash of the Champions and not receiving an NWA World Heavyweight Championship match. This resulted in a match between Luger and Steamboat for Luger's United States Championship at the Great American Bash. Luger defeated Steamboat by disqualification to retain his title after Steamboat attacked Luger with a steel chair.
He's trying to turn.
Yes.
He's trying to turn heel.
Yeah.
They wouldn't book him heel.
Nope. They wouldn't. But that's pretty much the aftermath with what happened with Flair going into a program with Terry Funk, and then Steamboat going into a program with Luger, and then Luger turning heel, and then Steamboat trying to turn heel, like you said. And that's pretty much what happened after this trilogy here. And this trilogy right here, I want to ask you on this here. With these three matches, these three, best, like with Flair and Steamboat, they both made each other look great. They brought the best out of each other there, and it just everything just happened so right, aligned so great. And even like to this day, with us talking about this match right here, and even Flair and Steamboat going back and even talking about this years later and stuff about what their experience with this match, their three matches there and stuff. Do you consider this a trilogy that anyone that goes back to look at like a best of like three matches, would you consider this in that people should check out?
I think they definitely stand out on their own for the quality of work alone. If like not only fans, but people that are getting into the wrestling business, young guys that want to become wrestlers, that want to learn how to work and make it look great, they need to go back and watch these three matches. And the reason that these three matches, it was the shortness of that span. They only really had those three, and then that was it. And they only really had this little short 3-month run with each other, and then that was it. And the fact that it was so good then make people want to see it again now, all these decades later, when Flair's talking about coming out of retirement. The very first person that they talked about, the very first person that Flair even acknowledges is he would want to do it with would be Ricky Steamboat. And then I mentioned it on another podcast. There's only so many guys that Ric Flair can have a match with now that relates back to then. There's not a lot of guys that he had runs with. Funk's not going to be doing any matches. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of guys he had runs with. Steamboat could still be active enough in the ring if it was going to be a 6-man tag with the FTR and the Rock and Roll, because they're trying to tie that into to where the Rock and Roll is talking about retiring as well. So they're trying to work out a 6-man. If they could do that, then those guys could have a good match again. But if it was just them one-on-one, they're both too old. They're going to show that it's not what it used to be. It's going to be I don't know. I said it before. The phrasing I used is it's going to be a tarnished memory of what once was. You know what I mean? So
yes.
You're not going to be able to get that back. As bad as the kids today love to go back and try and have that just one more match thing. I love the fact that they're bringing the history up and bringing that to the forefront. But these guys aren't capable. And I still say that Flair shouldn't be having this match. It's not going to be a good look. It's going to be good that he's finally able to retire. Like we just talked about Terry Funk. Him and Terry Funk have retired multiple times now at this point. So, like, we're not going to see Funk doing any more matches. I saw pictures recently. Terry Funk doesn't look that well. And I hope Terry Funk feels big pump to Terry Funk. I hope he feels better. But Ric Flair shouldn't be doing this match, even with guys that are capable, FTR, and an older Rock and Roll Express, even with guys that are capable of doing most of the leg work and most of the bump work. I read an article just before we came on to do this podcast. Flair's talking about he's going to come off the top rope again, or come off it's like at some point you got to just be enough to step. You got to step back and you got to. I think Undertaker waited too long. I think Undertaker should have retired a couple of years earlier before he had some of those last couple of matches that he had.
Yeah.
You have to be able to step back to protect your legacy. You built a legacy at this point, but you got to do things now to protect it, and being the old guy that's still trying to go isn't a good look on anyone, even for someone the caliber of Ric Flair. And it hurts me to say that, but it's the truth,
Right.
So I don't even think he should be having this match, but it's going to draw. I guarantee it's going to draw because people are going to want to see it because it very well could be. And if it's the Rock and Roll's last match and they work it all out together, it's for sure going to pull money across that weekend, So
it is.
What happens.
It is. And Steamboat
weekend in Nashville.
What's that?
SummerSlam weekend in Nashville. That's the same. It's all going to be happening that same weekend.
Right. Steamboat already put out comment. I was reading about that because he thought really long and hard about it, and he again, like you said tarnish. He don't want that memory tarnished. He wants people to think back at that because that was a moment there. And even when he did the one WrestleMania match with Jericho right there, if you remember that there, it's just he wants that, and what he had with Flair back then. You want that memory. You don't want to think like, oh yeah, I remember when Flair had his last match. You seen what happened? You don't want that. I totally get why Steamboat, because Steamboat didn't jump right on it. Steamboat sat back and thought about it. I got to give him a little bit of credit to that. He thought about it and he's like, nah.
I respect his decision. He went for the preservation of his legacy and the integrity of the product that he was going to be able to put out over a money grab.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now just recently, since we're talking a little bit of current events, now that we've finished up with the other, Brian Blair may have let the cat out of the bag. I don't know if you saw this, but in an interview that Brian Blair done, he's the one that originally said that maybe Hulk Hogan was going to be this opponent. Now everybody thinks it's going to be Hulk Hogan. That's the big rumor in the gossip mill in the business right now, whether or not it's going to be Hogan. And Brian Blair was kind of backtracking in that interview. I watched that interview this morning. He was talking, and you can tell that he's trying to hint at it, but then he like just, I don't know if he has a misfire brain connection or what, but he totally goes into, they like, Hogan likes to give back and like starts like putting it over, right? So then the interviewer's like, wait, so are you saying that Hulk Hogan's going to be the mystery opponent? And then it puts him on the spot, and then you can see him backpedaling, you know what I mean, trying to cover his words. It's a really interesting piece of video. So now it's kind of leaked out of the bag that maybe Hogan is the mystery opponent for Flair in his final match. So it'll be interesting to see who it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's a short list of guys everybody wants to do that match, but there's a short list of guys that Flair's going to do it with to try and draw the most money. Because if this really is his retirement, he's looking for that payday.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. You mentioned about, you said Undertaker. One of the things I like how Undertaker ended his career and went out was he had that match there with AJ Styles, and it was in 2020. It was during the pandemic, and what Taker did was he took two characters that he did and put them together, and I like the fact that when he defeated AJ Styles, he got on his motorcycle and rode off into the sunset. Yeah. I thought it was a perfect ending for the character, because he rides off, that perfect ending right there. You hear he ride off into the sunset. Taker rode off into the sunset, and it was perfect. And I was glad.
Like the Boneyard match.
My God, I love
those matches that he had prior to that with. The last couple that he had there were really kind of stinkers, you know what I mean? And they were really slow and really stodgy moves, and like. But I'm glad the Boneyard match was good, because a match like that catered to him as an older worker, because it was shot like a movie, and they could stop and cut and do different things. So that was to his benefit, and that looked really well. But those last few in-ring matches that he had were kind of the shits, and I hate to say that. And I'm going to say this too, and it's an unpopular opinion, and I have a lot of those, man, but I stand by most of them.
Hey, you're using
work.
I'm letting you use my. Hey, you can use my podcast as a platform, man. It's your opinion. I want to mention, it's like the guest I have come on this show. They use this platform for their opinion, and whatever they say, they stand by it, and I just give them the platform. But go ahead there, Jim.
I definitely think the Hall of Fame speech that The Undertaker gave, it was very strange. And everybody wants to say it was like a TED Talk. It seems to me like he was practicing for a speaking career in the future. It was just a very strange thing, the way he was doing all that and walking around and doing it that way. Really, and it was a great takeaway from his character, the silent, stone-faced Undertaker. Now you've got him walking around the ring all animated and talking and doing things. I mean, I understand it was his Hall of Fame speech and all that, but it just seemed very odd to me. But like you said earlier, that's another time, another story, know? Like, but for the best of 3 series, these matches, anybody that wants to learn about good quality in-ring work and see two of the best technicians of their time at their peak, these are matches that you definitely like. I would put these matches up against any of Bret Hart's matches when he was at his peak. You know what I mean? Like, for technical quality, these two guys not only told a great story, they had great quality matches in that ring. And
they did. They
solidified their legacies with Steamboat,
Mm-hmm. They did.
That was the last great thing he did.
They did, and both men, like we're talking about, went on to have great careers, in professional wrestling. And it's one of these trilogies that if you want to check out a best of 3 series, I definitely put this out there for people to check out. And I honestly got to tell you, man, I've enjoyed having you come on the podcast here. I've been wanting to get you on for a while just to talk there and stuff, and it's great to finally get you on and talk about this trilogy here, because I definitely like to get you back on again in the future and talk more about, you know, different type of matches and stuff, and just, you know, we'll talk about something, man, because I love what you do. I love the website that you put out stories and stuff about, because I catch myself on there reading stuff, and I enjoy everything that you do, Jim.
We love everybody that comes to see us at ProWrestlingStories.com, and I encourage everyone. I take up a lot of the territorial, historical end of things, but we've got so many great writers on that team, and JP runs a good ship, and everybody does work from the heart, and it really is stories. It's not just stats and statistics. We dive into all kinds of stuff, and I have some road story articles and stuff on there, funny things that happen on the road, and some character and personality profile articles and stuff like that. I'm very proud of the work that we've got on there, and I'm happy to be affiliated with those guys. And I thank you for giving me a platform to come on and talk about the wrestling business. And anytime you want to talk shop, I'm always going to be available to my brothers out there that want to sit down and, you know what I mean, under the learning tree, as Ernie Ladd would say. We're all going to learn off of each other and enjoy the history of this business and the legacy that it provides, and everything that comes with that, man. And like, I want the younger folks today to understand, you know, you got to get out there and learn the history of the business. So check out Pro Wrestling Stories and everything I got going there. Look for me, do a little promotional pop right here. Look for me on YouTube. I got a YouTube page up and running right now. Got some food reviews, wrestling, doing a lot of different things, some haunted house stuff, some good stuff on there. Go check it out, Jim Phillips at YouTube. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything I got going on right now. There'll be a new Wrestling Territories coming out in a week or so. I haven't spoiled the territory that it's going to be, but we've been talking a little bit about some of the stuff that interacts with that tonight. So we'll see. Everybody tune in for that one. But
awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, man, to come on and have this platform. I really appreciate it, man. I enjoyed speaking with you.
Oh, no problem, man. Definitely. And I want to add this here. Where can people find you on social media? What social media handles do you have?
Well, with the YouTube, it's just going to be my name, Jim Phillips. And then you can find me on Facebook, too. I don't have, as far as Facebook goes, I've got the friends-only profile. I got, you know what I mean? You got to have that little bit of separation there. So I try not to do just a gimmicked-out Facebook page. It's me. And but the YouTube is there, and the Pro Wrestling Stories, check that out. I'm a regular. I do a spot called Territory Talk on Dan and Benny in the Ring. You can look for that with those guys. They're on Facebook, and Podbean, I think, is the podcast service that they use. So, yeah, check them out. You know, I enjoy working with those guys, and anytime I get a chance to sit down and talk shop, I'm always going to be there. I thank you again, my brother. I appreciate the time.
No problem. Thank you for coming on. That is it for the Everett Lee Show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Everett Lee Show, and I'll see you next time for another episode of the Everett Lee Show. Peace.
Follow the Everett Lee Show on the following social media platforms: Facebook, The Everett Lee Show; Twitter, @The Everett _Lee; Instagram, Everett Lee. Subscribe, follow The Everett Lee Show on the following platforms: Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Everett Lee and Johners Podcast Network, WrestlingWithJohners.com. Follow Podcast City Network on the following social media platforms: on their website, Podcast City Net; Facebook, Podcast City Network; Twitter, @Podcast City Net;